Monday afternoon, I guess it is. My name is Beth, and my pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am a grad student and a violence prevention educator here at UW Oshkosh. I want to welcome everybody. Today we have some folks from Harbor House here to talk about just some of the great work that they do. So I guess we could start with introductions for whoever wants to go first and give your name, your pronouns, and what your job is at Harbor House.
All right, I will start out. My name is Erin Quinnell. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And I've been with Harbor House since November of last year as a crisis and shelter advocate. So what that means really is working with shelter residents who are staying here after fleeing domestic violence, doing some case managing. So a lot of times when people leave an abusive situation, they are starting from zero. They have to find new housing, find transportation, find maybe a new job. All of these things tend to come up when someone leaves a domestic violence situation. So working with residents to try to get them back on track to be successful and kind of get back on their own feet. And I know, do you want me to jump right into the first question with background and education, or? Okay. And then my background in education, I have a Bachelor of Arts from UWO. Major was Spanish and my minor was anthropology.
Hi, sorry. My name is Zong. I am the Hmong outreach advocate here at Harbor House. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And my educational background, I graduated from UW Green Bay in human development. All right.
Yeah, and then hi everybody, my name is Macrina. I am a legal advocate here with Harbor House, which means that I tend to work with both shelter clients and clients that we kind of get in from the outer community who have questions about how to, navigate through the court system and what legal actions they can take to kind of move throughout the situation that they're in. I have been here for about 3 months now. I started back in July, and I actually graduated from UWO as well back in May with a major in English and minors in business administration, law and policy, and Spanish.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. So does your organization offer like specialized training? I mean, because I know like some of you mentioned, like Erin, you said you had a degree in anthropology, and Macrina, you have also a degree in English. So maybe not necessarily something we would think about as being like super related to domestic violence. So do you also do other training, or how does that work for your organization?
Now, I guess first I'll just ask, are you talking for specialized training for staff when we begin? Yeah, so I mean, every advocate who begins with Harbor House, there is definitely a whole lot of training that goes into it, because really what it comes down to is the ability to connect with people. And I think that goes for a lot of social work or social service type of positions and professions. Looking at our backgrounds, if you ask a number of our coworkers, it's a similar story. It's not necessarily nonprofit or human leadership or anything like that. It is, there are some of us who are social work majors, but there are a lot of us too who just kind of found our way in a nonprofit because that's where our hearts were at. And I think at the end of the day, that's what is most important. And then the training kind of with coming into domestic violence, that's more of a specialized thing, but that's also something that can be picked up. And like you said, for me specifically, anthropology, not necessarily what one would think when they're looking at, working in a domestic violence shelter, but it actually, I've been able to pull so much from my anthropology degree. as far as cultural relativism, knowing how to work with folks from all different backgrounds and walks of life. But we definitely do have special training when we first start here.
I have to agree with Erin there. I know in terms of my English major, you wouldn't think necessarily would really transfer over that much to a career working in domestic abuse services, but I found that really with English, the whole goal with it is communication, and that's so important when working in an industry like this. So I think it's really just been beneficial to be able to know, because so much of my job specifically is being able to communicate not only with my clients, but being able to help them, communicate effectively with organizations that they need to get in touch with and need to communicate effectively with. So it's definitely all about transferable skills. I think a lot of, like as a recent college student, I can say that, a lot of times we talk about that in some of our classes, like, oh, you're going to be surprised where you can use all of these skills that you're getting, but it really is amazing, especially when you're doing work in nonprofits, just how much all of those individual skills and everybody's different, talents that they bring to the table can be utilized in such an effective way.
And I've been working for Harbor House since 2012. So I feel like over the years, we have all different kind of training from everywhere. And you just have to find the trainings that will best fit your role. And Harbor House is very good at supporting us with those professional trainings that we need for our position as well.
I think that's wonderful because it sounds like you all have degrees and you can pull something out, but really it comes down to, like you said, your ability to be able to communicate, but I'm sure just also a passion for helping people and seeing, the changes that you can help facilitate with your clients. So can you talk a little bit about, maybe each of you can kind of go through and tell us like maybe what your day looks like, because you each have different roles. So maybe kind of just talk about on a day-to-day basis what it looks like at your job.
Okay, so I'll go first. I'm the Hmong outreach advocate here at Harbor House. Before that, I was working strictly with outside services. So meaning people that are walking in or people that are not living in shelter, I will be helping them with whatever they need. Basically, they will come in, tell their story, and then I will find resources for them, find ways of teaching them about domestic violence if that's something that they have experienced. And I do support group on Monday nights. Yeah, I mean, there's so much in our role that we do here. And now that I'm the Hmong outreach advocate, my role is to go out into the community now and, collaborate, work with other organizations, and just letting them know that I'm here. That way we could connect more with the Hmong community. Because a lot of times the Hmong community don't know that I am here. So they don't know that we have the services for them as well.
I can go next. My day, I'm as a legal advocate, my day can kind of look pretty different depending on what day you find me on. Most of the time, like Zong and Erin, I tend to take appointments with clients who have questions or concerns. Specifically, I work with clients who have questions about navigating the legal process. The most common things that I typically do involve like helping clients fill out restraining orders and that paperwork that's associated with that. Divorce is another pretty common type of paperwork that I work through clients with. Additionally, it can be a lot of different things involving child placement and custody and child support. And there are all sorts of different issues as well. So sometimes we'll, be involved with, criminal court proceedings, and on any given day, we also as legal advocates will provide that kind of, courtroom moral support. As advocates, we obviously can't provide legal representation because, we aren't attorneys, but we can, you know, accompany clients and assist them in connecting with attorneys and resources, and also attend hearings with them as just that kind of moral support, because the, you know, legal process is intimidating for anybody, but especially in situations like this where you have somebody who's been dealing with a partner or someone who's, you know, they're really, you know, there's a lot of fear there. So it's nice to have that support wherever you can get it.
Thank
And
you.
then, yeah, I'll say, so my day-to-day as a crisis and shelter advocate, like I touched on earlier, so crisis and shelter, my main focus is working with residents who are staying here in shelter. And I think I will just say too, while we're on this call, let everyone know, because I think there's a big misconception in the community that Harbor House is just a shelter and nothing more. Shelter is one of our many programs. We have plenty of resources and services for people who aren't staying in shelter. But because shelter is such a necessary thing to provide for people who are fleeing for their safety, we do have a team dedicated to case managing residents who are staying in shelter. And so, kind of like I mentioned earlier, a lot of people who are coming into shelter are literally leaving everything behind. You know, sometimes we have people who come in and it's a planned thing. They've kind of planned this out in order to leave. They've stashed away money over years, over months. And then sometimes people leave in an instant with literally nothing but the clothes on their back. And so we have people coming into shelter who are at all different starting points. And so really it's just being able to be flexible with that and make sure that we can pull from whatever resources we have for them. One person may need 50 resources, another may need 2. But really my day-to-day looks like appointments, one-on-one appointments with residents. I try to check in weekly with each resident that I'm case managing. Just check in on how are your goals doing, what are your next steps, how can I help you get there, are there resources that you need, and then just the emotional support piece of it too, because it's not an easy process, and that's probably a big understatement. But for somebody to leave, it's an ongoing, you know, the fear doesn't stop once someone leaves. It continues, and it's a constant battle with, am I safe? If I leave out of this building, am I going to be safe? Am I going to be seen by that person? And so there's a lot of emotional support, and that goes for all of our advocates, all of our support services. Definitely there's that big emotional support piece to it, like Macrina touched on, accompanying residents or clients to court. But really my day-to-day looks like making sure that residents' needs are met, whether that's running the crisis phone lines. We do have a 24/7 crisis line, which all of us kind of pitch in from the different teams to help run that crisis line. And then, like I said, just making sure that whether it be material resources or kind of emotional support or coping strategies, because a lot of times people are coming from very isolated environments and oftentimes have not learned great coping skills. And so that's also what we're here for, is to kind of help provide that resource and teach some healthy coping strategies.
Thank you. That's great. Would you be willing to, each of you, go through and just kind of talk a little bit about what some of the challenges of your job is?
I think for me, the challenging part is after you safety plan with a person that is coming in to tell their story and having to go back home, is to hope that, you know, that safety plan will get them by. I think that's one of my biggest challenge.
Could you tell us what a safety plan is? Like what does that all entail?
Sure, it all depends, because everyone's safety plan is different depending on what the situation looks like. Could it be that the person is planning to stay in the relationship? How can we safety plan if things happen? What are they more comfortable doing and what they are not comfortable doing? And if they plan to leave, what do they need to take with them when they leave? Just all, or who their safe people are to reach out to if something happens. Are they comfortable calling the police? You know, every safety plan is different and designed strictly for each individual. So it's all unique in its own way.
Yeah, I think kind of to kind of go off of what Zong said, I think for me especially, the one of the toughest parts of the job is, coming to the realization and understanding that there are, parts of this process and parts of the system that are out of your control. I think as advocates, we really, our hearts go out to the people that we're helping. And our whole job is to, help them advocate for themselves. And, we're just trying to encourage them to, move throughout these systems. And particularly in the legal system, we can provide as much insight as we can, and a client can advocate for themselves and do all of the paperwork and, do everything that they need to do. But, ultimately it is up to the court to make a decision and to provide an answer in those situations. And unfortunately, sometimes those decisions aren't always made to the benefit of the individuals that we're helping. So that's just, really hard to enter into those situations and just kind of remind ourselves that, there are parts of this that unfortunately we can't control. Thankfully, we are really lucky at Harbor House to have some great relationships with the Outagamie and Calumet County courthouses and the, family court commissioners and individuals, who work within that system. They've always been really receptive to, trainings from our programs and really understanding what domestic violence is. And, they're really invested in breaking the stereotypes that are associated with that through as much as they can through, court advocacy. So that's always something nice to consider. But kind of like Zong said, it is hard when you're so invested in, trying to help someone better their lives. It's hard to, kind of relinquish that control and realize that we have to kind of work within the system that we have.
That would be a challenge. Thank you for sharing that. Erin, what are some of the challenges that you face in your position?
And my answer is kind of a combination of Zong and Macrina's. I'd say one of the things that I've really come to realize is it's very hard, to be honest, not to get discouraged with the gaps in services and resources that our communities have for victim survivors. And not even victim survivors, just people who, have compounded traumas, people who especially are facing a lot of added barriers. It's frustrating. It's frustrating because I have witnessed firsthand, I'll sit in with a resident who we're trying to make some phone calls to try to get them hooked up with some services. And we'll call over to X, agency and say, hey, can we get them on this wait list? Nope, sorry, you have to call over to this agency first. Okay, thanks. So we call over to the next agency. They say, no, you can't. You have to be established as an Outagamie County resident for 30 days before, and so on and so on and so on. Basically, we've really noticed that there are certainly gaps in services. And so there are a lot of people who end up falling through the cracks. And it's not the fault of those individuals. It's not necessarily the fault of us as advocates. It's just that's how the system in our community works. And so I think it's just identifying those gaps and trying to advocate as much as we can for them to be filled. But of course, that's like on a systems change. That's on like a government level, and that's where it gets really tough. And so, like Macrina said, it's tough sometimes to see that and get frustrated with that, but still recognize that these are the systems that are in place, and all we can really do at the end of the day is work as hard as we can to advocate for our clients, and try to inform and educate the rest of our community as to why these things are barriers for our clients, why it's not as easy for our clients as just doing this or doing that. So I'd say that's one piece for me. And then another piece that's tough is when folks come into shelter and they flee, they've left the situation, they're here for a little bit, and then they go home. And when I say go home, I mean they go home to their abusive partner. And the thing I think too is, just to be clear, I'm not disappointed or anything in the client. It's just hard to watch because we know how the cycle of violence goes as advocates. But the reality is that oftentimes if people are coming into shelter, they're staying for a little bit and they go home, it's because they weren't ready. And that's something I may be skipping ahead just a little bit on one of the questions that was going to be asked about, what you can do to support as a friend or a family member. But that's something that a lot of people fail to realize is when everyone else around them sees a toxic relationship, sees that this person's unhealthy, and the person in the relationship doesn't see it, it's really easy as a family or friend member or family or friend to say, this person's awful, you got to get out of that relationship. If you don't get out of that relationship, it's only going to get worse. And the thing is, unfortunately, if that person can't see it for themselves yet, they're not going to be successful in leaving and healing and coming out of that relationship. And so it's hard when we see people come in, we work with them very closely, we feel like we make some great progress, and then they go home. But the great thing about it is we know that, okay, we were here. We know that they know we're here, and it may take them another 2-3 times to leave and go back and leave and go back. But the important thing is that they know we're here when they are really ready.
Yeah, it sounds like even if it doesn't work out how you hope it works out the first time you planted that seed, so that it's there when you guys are there when they're ready to come in and fully take advantage of what you all have to offer. Well, we can go into that question. We can talk about what, maybe first start with like maybe some signs of what might be happening. Like, what are some signs if folks are in a violent partnership? And then what are some things as bystanders or friends or family can we do to best support them? And whoever wants to answer those questions is fine.
I think one of the things that I want to touch on, just because I think we all have this picture of what domestic violence looks like, and that's physical abuse. That's the picture, at least, that has been painted historically of domestic violence. But domestic violence does not just mean physical abuse. It means emotional, verbal, psychological manipulation, tactics that make you question whether or not, did I actually provoke that fight? Did I provoke that person? Yeah, maybe they're right. Maybe I was the one who was in the wrong here. And getting you to believe that you're the instigator, even when they're the ones who are beginning the fights or instigating the fights. And another big thing is isolation. I think that's a really big sign that a lot of people don't recognize as, and it's often one of the first signs of domestic violence beginning in a relationship. And basically what that means is the person who's using abuse will often try to systematically cut off their partner from all of their supports, all of their family members, their friends. And it starts small. It starts as just kind of little things, and I don't really like it when you hang out with so-and-so because I don't like the way that they talk to me or they looked at me. And slowly, one by one, they start to begin to cut off all of your supportive people in your life. And that then it gets to a point where now you don't have any of those supportive members in your life. And so if you were to choose to leave that person, you have no one to go to. And so I think that's a big sign that oftentimes, because people don't see the physical violence, they don't recognize that that's a big sign. But I think isolation is one of the biggest first signs that you should be on the lookout for, is when your friend's not returning your calls, they're only ever spending time with that person. And the thing is too, that's often the easiest time for friends and family to say, screw it, I don't want to spend time with them if they don't want to spend time with me. When the reality is they're at the mercy of that other person who is systematically and really just trying to cut them off from all of their support.
Yeah, kind of to add on to what Erin said, I think in addition to that, because that isolation is such a prevalent thing, and that's such a highly used tactic for individuals who use abuse. Just if you know someone, if you have someone in your life who's going through domestic abuse and is struggling, one of the best things you can do to advocate for them is just to remind them that their feelings are valid. And I think kind of like Erin said earlier, we all have in our minds this picture of what domestic abuse looks like. And that's really just been the image that's kind of been promoted by media and, typical stereotypes. And domestic abuse can occur in any relationship. It can occur to any partner. And there is no one correct way to react to a situation like that. And that's regardless of whether, this is a victim who's just realizing that they're, going through this and they're reaching out for help for the first time, or if this is somebody who's, years, down the line from this process and, they've gone through everything that they need to do. They've taken steps to remove themselves from the situation as much as they can. It's just a matter of understanding that there's no one right way to, cope and to process, traumatic events like that. So in addition to just, validating feelings, one of the best things you can do is just to continue to educate yourself on, what domestic abuse looks like, and just understanding that, it's not just something that occurs to cisgender white women. It's something that can occur in, all different types of relationships, and it can look different for everyone who's in it.
I think for me, I agree with what Erin and Macrina are saying. A lot of it is to, like, you kind of lose who you are. You forget who you are again, and because you lost kind of that friendship, the connection with all your key people, because of the isolation and then controlling, and then the gaslighting, and then you can't even trust yourself at that point of making a decision, because it seems like everything you're doing, your partner is making it seem like it's not good enough, or that you're crazy, that you're not understanding, that you don't see it. So I think once you start to feel that way, you lose like your self-esteem, your self-worth, and then you just get lost in it, and you just feel very like you can't even trust yourself anymore. But once you start to, like, it clicks that you realize, like, what is going on with me? What do I need to do to take care of myself at this point? That's something that it's alarming, I guess, if you start to feel like you're not yourself anymore because you feel lost in this relationship due to the relationship.
That's such a great point. And I think that as a friend, if we can just be there to like support that and not try and get them to do what we think they should do, but just understand that we may not understand what they're going through fully, but just to know that we can be there for them. I wonder, do you guys do programming for like younger kids that have to do with like relationships and things like that? Like maybe some almost like preventative things, so that hopefully if they were to ever find themselves in a violent relationship, that they may understand and know the signs better?
Yeah, we have several children and youth advocates here at Harbor House. Two of our advocates, Jenny and Jennifer, work specifically with young clients who are in shelter and who might come in out in the community, specifically to kind of provide them with, to answer any questions that they might have, kind of provide them, they're not technically counselors, but they do provide kind of a chance to ask questions and provide some of that outreach and that, support that it might be difficult to get in some situations. And then we have another children and youth outreach advocate, Kira, who specifically goes out in the community and goes into schools working with young students to provide that kind of preventative education, as well as some insights for any people who might, come in experiencing dating violence and just need some additional support and services.
Yeah, and in Kira's role too, I just want to add, I think it's a really impressive program that Kira runs. So Kira goes into schools in the area, like Macrina said, and anywhere from elementary school age up through high school. And what's great about that prevention education, like you said, is, if we're working more on prevention than just responding to the problem, then that's trying to cut that off at the source. And so Kira goes in and it's tailored to the age group. So obviously kids aren't going to be ready for necessarily the domestic violence talk. And so kids, the conversation is about what's a healthy relationship? What are healthy boundaries? what's healthy in a friendship? What are some things that if a friend did would make you uncomfortable or would make you upset? And so that's kind of more tailored to the younger kids because it's really just teaching healthy boundaries from the get-go, and not necessarily putting it in an intimate relationship setting, but that still carries over as they get older, and they start to recognize what healthy boundaries are, a little bit earlier on in life. And then as Kira gets more into middle school and then high school, then it is talking maybe a little bit more about dating specifically and what teen dating violence looks like. And that is a really, really important role because I don't know the exact numbers, but I know it's a high percentage of high school students who, when given the definition of teen dating violence, and are asked, have you experienced this? It's a very high percentage who say yes. And oftentimes they're surprised because, again, they have this picture in their head that domestic violence is only physical assault. And then they begin to realize that the manipulation, the control, the let me see your phone, who are you texting? You can't keep your phone passwords from me. You can't keep your any social media passwords. If you're messaging other people, then I need to know about it. All of those things, it comes up then when Kira's doing those trainings, and it kind of brings to light for some teens too that, wow, these are some unhealthy behaviors that I didn't realize qualify as dating violence.
That's a really great point. And I think that can probably carry over into college life too. I'm sure that you probably see some of the same things that maybe, folks, who are watching could maybe recognize that are not so healthy. And it's almost like they seem small at first, but once they start adding up and you look at the big picture, it's like, whoa, that's really what's going on.
Can I add something with the children and youth program? I like their program because they do a lot of safety planning with the children as well. So let's just say if there was a parent that is an abusive partner, or their parent is abusive, we do safety planning with them as well. That way when they're at the parent's home, that they know what to do to keep themselves safe as well. They do that along with coping skills, because they have witnessed things that, they may believe that that's something that's how they should deal with things. So the children's and youth advocates are able to teach them healthy coping skills at a young age. That way they could use that in their life and apply it, because a lot of times you only know what you see and what's around you, but just having that extra safe person to teach you these other techniques, it really does help. The other thing is, we as advocates are not mandated reporters. So it's safer for us to work with the clients and really put that safety plan in place, and for them to feel safe enough to really open up and tell us what's really going on and how we can help them navigate through this as well.
So, so are all of you confidential then, or? Oh,
Yes.
okay. So, wow, that's really great. So really anyone can come in and talk to any of you and not have to worry about having to be reported.
Correct. So we're not mandated reporter, and our services are free.
Yeah, and the confidentiality piece is a big one. That's definitely, I think, a misconception that keeps people from seeking services. And I completely understand why. There are so many people who walk through our doors and say, we often have them fill out when they first come in. We'll just have them fill out some general information on kind of a sheet, with some of their information. We'll ask for some of the information of the person who's using abusive behaviors, only because it does help us kind of keep track, and not only stays with Harbor House, but it does help us keep track then as well if that person were to walk in and look for services, because sometimes there are people who, there are definitely relationships too where there are both people involved in the relationship who are using unhealthy behaviors. But anyway, we will ask for that general information, and there are so many individuals who say, I don't feel comfortable, I don't want to put their name down because I don't want them to get in trouble. And we always have to explain that this information is confidential. We are not mandated reporters. We can't even share this information with the police or with any law enforcement unless you wanted us to and signed a release of information. And lots of people, I think, are scared of that piece. They're scared of, you know, and a lot of times we see from the outside, it's really easy for some people to say, this person has done such horrible things to you. You know, they could be physically violent. They can be really cruel. Why would you want to protect them? But that's from the outside. You know, we're not in that relationship. We're not experiencing all the things that that individual is experiencing, because a lot of times it's complicated. It's complicated because while that person may be cruel, while that person may be physically violent, there's a reason that individual is in a relationship with that person in the first place. And there's often history there, and that individual may still have feelings and may still love that other person and want to protect them. And so I would definitely, if anyone on this call has anyone in their life who is experiencing domestic violence and has any concerns about reaching out for that reason, feel free to spread the word that we are not mandated reporters, and confidentiality is our #1 thing here, because we don't want it to be a barrier to people accessing services.
That's wonderful information. Thank you. Maybe we could switch gears a little bit, and each of you could talk a little bit about what joys that your job brings you. Tell us some of the good stuff.
For me, I enjoy doing my support group, just seeing the participants come in, and some of them do come like regular, so they love it. They come and support each other, and it's amazing to see the support because everyone understands each other. And in this journey, they are able to help each other through that. And it's just amazing, especially if you've been in the line of work for numerous of years. You see the growth of each person that comes to your support group, and it's just amazing to see the growth once they are able to leave their relationship and really grow within themselves. That's for me the joy of my job, is just, you know, giving time for them to heal and for them to really just be themselves again.
Yeah, kind of to go off of that, I personally love the empowerment that comes when you're watching a client who's kind of going through the legal system, when you're watching them, you know, make decisions for themselves about how they'd like to move forward. Because the legal system, by the time they get to me, you know, they've been confronted with so much. And a lot of times, you know, they're just looking for a legal remedy. They're looking for another system to kind of acknowledge their situation and to acknowledge that what's going on isn't okay. And, you know, being able to provide somebody with like, these are all of the options you have. This is how you might be able to help yourself in this situation, and to watch them, you know, choose an option and to hear it explained, and, you know, watch them just kind of be like, oh, well, I can do this and I can do that. And kind of realize that there's hope and that there's this plan for how you can move forward is just this incredible thing, because it's just to be able to provide that opportunity for growth, that there is a way to move forward and there's a way to kind of get beyond this situation that they're in is just an incredible thing to watch. And then, you know, getting to the, you know, the end of the line, typically where you're, you know, finally sitting in a courtroom with someone, and in those cases where a decision, you know, comes out where it's in their favor, just that immense, you know, joy and that immense relief sometimes, that just, you know, overwhelming feeling, you can just see it, that sense of relief. Like I went through, you know, all of this in court. Court is not an easy process for anyone, much less somebody who has to go through it. And unfortunately, our court system is great in that it tries to provide, you know, a sense of equality, and it tries to make things equitable for all involved. But unfortunately, there are some cases where, because the court tries to be equitable, when you have a manipulative partner, they can try to manipulate the law in order to, you know, kind of draw out these situations and continue to try to manipulate, you know, their ex-partner. And so it can be a long process for a lot of people, but finally getting to, you know, that final hearing or that final decision and getting to see all of the work and all of the effort that I put into this has paid off, and I can move forward. It's just such an incredible thing to see.
That's wonderful. Thanks for sharing that. Erin, did you want to talk about your joys?
Yeah, I think similar to Zong highlighted how doing support group is just really neat to see the way that our clients are there to support one another. I'd say the same thing for clients who are staying in shelter. It's really interesting and it's beautiful. It is to see, I'll meet with a client one week and we talk about how transportation is a big barrier. They get a new job and they're excited about it, but they're like, man, I have to figure out how to use the bus and I'm going to have to walk because it's 15 minutes from the bus line. And then we check in the next week and I'm like, so how's riding the bus going? How's it been going getting to work? And they go, oh, I worked something out with so-and-so who's also staying here. She's got a car. So she brings me there. She picks me up on the way back and I buy her groceries once a week or something. And it's really, really cool to watch that happen very organically. Because yeah, we're here to provide support and resources, but honestly, other clients who are staying in shelter can be just as supportive and just as encouraging for some of our residents as we can as staff. And the thing is, they're not trained. They are operating solely off of just like this wonderful sense of human decency. And then there's also this piece of it that shared experience, shared lived experience, where a lot of our clients are coming from very similar environments, very controlling, very manipulative, very restricted environments. And so they're finding comfort in one another. And that, like I said, is just such a beautiful organic thing to watch happen. And on top of that, I'd also say just watching the transformation that happens from the first day that someone comes into shelter to the day that they're leaving. We have, a lot of times someone might come into shelter and they are closed off, very guarded, walls are up. And we completely understand why. This person's coming from an environment where that was survival. That was survival for them. They could not let their guard down. But it's really cool to see as the weeks go by, as we check in more often, as we get to interact with residents more often, those walls start to come down more. And suddenly we're laughing and we have some inside jokes and they start smiling when they see staff in the hallway. And it's really neat to watch that happen. And then another thing I'd say is honestly, just the little things. We have, folks here who had never in their life had a driver's license, and we were able to help them apply for their temporary permit and go practice driving in the Harbor House van. And we took them to go get their license and they passed. And it was just like everybody here was so thrilled that day that this person got their license. So you just take the little things, you take the wins that you get and you hold on to them.
That's pretty cool. I know that your all's line of work can be pretty emotionally taxing. Do you ever feel like vicarious trauma with your clients? And if so, what do you each do for self-care? How do you take care of yourselves?
For me, I feel like I've been here for a very long, not very long, but then long enough to kind of feel like I have learned over the years to leave Harbor House at Harbor House and then go home and be present at home. But it did take years to really understand how to really sort it. But yeah, I think for me, just being able to debrief it over with other coworkers before you leave home. That way you can leave at home. That's been one of my biggest thing that I do here, so that we could rely on each other and, really teamwork it and tell each other what's going on, and, and very encouraging to one another. There was things that we're struggling with no judgment.
I'd have to say the same as Zong. I mean, on a an activities level, I try to get my exercise in during the week, try to get those endorphins going, spending time with my partner, things like that. But as much as I was trying to focus on those things when I first started this job, and I kept coming home and going, why am I having such a hard time leaving work at work when I'm trying to do these positive things like running and, spending time outside in nature. And really what did it for me, and it's been a long journey. I mean, Zong said it took years for her to get to that point. And I'm not saying that I'm there yet, but I've certainly grown a lot in the last year, even just with healthy boundaries. That has been the number way of taking care of myself. Just like Zong said, it came with me having to learn that it was okay to turn off my notifications when I went home, and me realizing it's okay to not check my email when I'm at home, and basically allowing myself the permission to go home and decompress, and telling myself that, you know what, it's going to be okay. If my phone is off, it's not the end of the world. And you know what, if someone absolutely really, really, really needs me in an emergency, they'll call me and I'll know because it'll be Harbor House's number. And that has done wonders for me. Really setting my own personal boundaries honestly has been the best thing for me. And it's not that we don't care, it's not that we don't want to care, but it doesn't do the clients any good, and it doesn't do us any good if we're lying awake at midnight, unable to fall asleep because we're worrying about a client. That's also what helped me kind of recognize that healthy boundaries for myself are going to make me more useful to the client. I'm no use to the client if I'm up at midnight every night trying to fall asleep and I'm exhausted and I'm worried about things all the time. I need to maintain my own health so that I can be there for our clients. So healthy boundaries are definitely the thing that helped me the most with separating that.
Yeah, I have to agree with Aaron and Zong on everything that they said. I'm out of the three of us, I think I'm the newest to this organization, and particularly to this line of work. When I started, I remember just, so many people were just, reminding me healthy boundaries, healthy boundaries, healthy boundaries. And, when you start, you're a little, arrogant. You think, oh, I've worked in like service industries before. Like I don't know, I don't take work home with me. I'll be fine. But really, especially when you're working with people who are coming to you in a state of crisis, it's, really easy as, empathetic people to kind of carry that crisis and kind of take that on for them and take that on and, take it home with you. So it really is about, just being able to be conscious of your own limits and, really understanding like, okay, these are my boundaries and I just have to be able to be comfortable enough sticking with them, and understanding, like Aaron said, that, just because I know the importance of taking time for myself doesn't mean that I'm not still, doing everything I can for these other people. And also, again, like Zong said, what's really been helpful for me is just Harbor House is this incredible environment. And I'm sure it's very similar in any, organization like ours, where you have people who are just, dedicated to, the service of others, where it's such an incredible environment. Everyone's so open. I remember sitting in a meeting with like an all staff meeting, and one of our coworkers said something that just made me smile. She said, it's like we're sitting at the table with the Justice League or the Avengers. It's, you're surrounded by these people who are just dedicated to helping others, and that extends to their fellow coworkers. And there's never a point where I've ever felt like, oh, I can't come to someone if I have an issue, if I ever have a question. I've always felt, and I think it's been, very perpetuated throughout our organization, that it's okay to come to people for help and support, whether that's on a personal level or a professional level. There's always going to be people, who are there and ready to advocate for you just as much as we're there to advocate for our clients.
Also, Harbor House, they have EAP, so we're able to get free counseling if that's something we need as well.
That's really great. I'm so thankful that you all have such a great work environment, because I think that's super important. I was wondering if someone would like to talk about what kind of opportunities that you have for the community to support you, such as volunteering, events, different things like that.
So I actually kind of began my career with Harbor House not knowing it was going to be a career with Harbor House, in 2019, I just wanted to get involved with something in the community. And I applied to be a front desk volunteer here. Loved it, was here. I would come in 2 hours once a week, 4 to 6 p.m. or something like that. And it's not hard work. I would sit up front. I got crisis line trained, so I would take a crisis call or two if I needed to. But really, it was just a lot of buzzing people in and out of the secure doors and scheduling resident appointments if they needed to make an appointment. And it just, I mean, it gave me a sense of fulfillment and just like I'm doing something with my time other than watching Netflix or something. And I really had no idea at that time. I knew I liked this place, but had my sights set on Madison, didn't think I'd ever be back in the Appleton area. So I left, moved to Madison, and then I ended up back here and ended up applying for a job here and love it. But really what got me here where I am right now is having volunteered at our front desk. Fell in love with the organization, but we definitely have a huge need for volunteers, especially being a nonprofit. We have all sorts of volunteers. So we have front desk volunteers. So if you're more comfortable answering the phone, talking with residents, great. If you're not, but you still want to help out, we definitely have needs in shelter. We have people who we kind of call the volunteers shelter runners. So they'll go down in the basement if there are items that need to be restocked in shelter. They just they work in the basement, they pull items for requests from residents. There are all sorts of things that we ask for volunteers for. So, you know, whether it's something that you want to have headphones in and do on your own and not talk to anyone, we've got stuff for that. Or if you want to do that social interaction, we also have plenty of opportunities for that. As far as, you know, community awareness, right now we have our Purple Porch project going on because it is October, which is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And so we're asking that community helps us spread awareness of domestic violence by lighting up your porch or your window or whatever it might be that you have purple. And so whether it's a string of lights that you buy at Walmart or whether you decide to purchase a kit through Harbor House, either way, just, you know, having those purple lights up, it really just shows our community, anyone who's experiencing domestic violence, as they drive by, as they walk by, every purple porch, every purple window that they see is another sign that somebody cares and somebody's there and somebody in their community cares about what's happening to them. And then, you know, as far as fundraising wise, it is helpful, of course, being a nonprofit. Any donations from the community are huge. But that's kind of what we have going on right now. Unfortunately, we don't have too many big events to volunteer at, but come spring, we should definitely have a few.
Can folks go on your website and look for those upcoming events?
Yes. Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, I honestly have to double check the website. I don't know if, I think our next event may be like, our next big event might be April. We did this past year, we did The Amazing Race, based on the TV show. So it was kind of like a scavenger hunt all over the Appleton area, Fox Valley area. Super fun. We had a whole lot of like 22 teams that participated. Lots of fun, just good, wholesome community engagement. And so we need volunteers for that. And we also, you know, encourage people to just participate too, if they want to be on a team or something. So that would be coming up in April. I don't know if it would be on the website yet. But just in general, if you look on our website, there's a whole bunch of information you can find as to how you can volunteer. Really, there, I mean, I think there's a drop down that says something along the lines of how to help or something. So if you're interested, absolutely, that's a good place to start.
So do you have any kind of, like, I know sometimes people ask, or organizations will ask for like clothes or shampoo or like things like that. Do you have a wish list for anything like that? Or do you prefer to just have monetary donations?
Our need list is on the website. So if anyone wanted to see what's the updated needed things, it's online.
Our social media outlets, like we have Facebook and Instagram, I know are two that we always have pretty well updated. And a lot of times in situations, if we're looking for something like specific, we'll post it on those sites as well. And that's also a great place to look for like volunteer events or things like that. If you're more comfortable using like Facebook or Instagram instead of just our website, but those are always options too.
And like Song said, we do always keep an updated wish list or needs list on our website or on social media. I will say something that we've really been aiming to do in the last few months is to make sure that we are providing to people coming from all different backgrounds, all different cultural backgrounds. And so that means especially knowing that a significant population that we serve in the Appleton area is African American or Black individuals. There's certainly a need when those individuals come into shelter for Black specific or textured hair needs. And so that's something that unfortunately we don't have donated as often, but it's really a very necessary, very vital thing that we want to make sure we're able to provide to any clients who are coming into shelter who do have those needs. So leave-in conditioner, oil, tail or edge combs, gel, which is on our website, but those things, any culturally specific items as well, those are super helpful, just because like I said, unfortunately, it's not the first thing that a lot of people think of donating, but it's absolutely a need for our clients. I think you're muted, Beth.
Sorry. We just have a few minutes left. So is there anything that either of you would like to add?
I think for me, it's just letting everyone know that, you know, if someone is struggling or dealing with domestic violence, that they are not alone, that we just want to make sure that they know that we're always here. If you have family or friends that is dealing with it as well, that they refer them to Harbor House or organization like ours, because we know that being with someone that you love, like your daughter or your son or anyone that is struggling with domestic violence, they may feel biased about it. Like, I love you, I just want the best for you. And it just makes it very complicated between the relationship. But knowing that you gave the referral and that you will come to these meetings with them to help them through this piece may be really good for them to reach out for different services. And just letting them know that we are here, that you shouldn't feel alone in this.
Thank you so much. And I just want to say thank you for coming and everything that you've shared. It's been so informational, and I just want to thank you for all that you do at Harbor House, and just to say how grateful that we have an organization like you in our community.
Well, thank you very much.
Does anybody attending have any questions? We have just like a minute left here if you want to put something in the chat or unmute. So Dr. Johnson just put Harbor House's website in our chat. So if you would like to connect or talk to anyone, there's that for you. So once again, thank you for coming, and hopefully we will see you next Monday, same time, for another Ask an Advocate. Have a wonderful week.